Recent discoveries indicate that Rock the Vote and other third-party organizations have had access to your voter rolls. Hi, we just finished up with a briefing down in the war room with the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society. The Amistad Project, directed by Phil Klein, has been investigating the potential for voter fraud for the past 18 months in connection with COVID regulations and government overreach. Specifically, that investigation has largely honed in on the activities of the CTCL, or the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and the monies that came into that organization through Mark Zuckerberg. However, there has been a recent connection that has developed from that. The Center for Tech and Civic Life, or CTCL, is a nonprofit 501c3. And the way that they've operated in this 2020 presidential election year has been to offer grants to specific governments in key swing states. So for example, they'll go to a Democrat stronghold city like Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, in these key swing states, and then they'll provide grants in order to supply those governments with funds for get out the vote efforts and for the operation of the electoral system itself. In those grants, they've dictated how the elections are to be operated. The CTCL has largely gotten its funding through Google and from Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg has given a total of $350 million to the CTCL alone, an additional $50 million to another nonprofit organization tied into the election effort. That $400 million totals the same $400 million that the federal government has distributed to all the states in order for the election to occur. However, the CTCL funds have been targeted, again, in those key Democrat cities within swing states. Now, a further development has occurred as we've been meeting with the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society and with Phil Klein specifically, and that is that another public-private partnership has occurred. So just as the public-private partnership occurred between the cities and the Center for Tech and Civic Life through those grants and through those contracts, another has occurred through cities and states working with Rock the Vote. Rock the Vote is classified as a 501c3 organization, and they have been given access to the voter rolls. This access is typically only granted to elected officials within specific capacities. It's not something that's granted to third parties or to personal individuals. We're seeing a trend of these public-private partnerships that are giving these accesses and allowing the private third-party individuals to dictate how government is to run the elections, and then also having access to that electoral process. Access to the voter rolls allows Rock the Vote or their volunteers to see real-time information about who's returning ballots, where they are registered, how they are registered, all of this information that would allow someone, whether Rock the Vote themselves or a nefarious volunteer, to determine how many ballots would be needed in order to overturn the election process. But moving on from that even further, we're now finding that the Center for Tech and Civic Life and Rock the Vote have some form of alliance that is openly acknowledged in their own media. And this can all be capped off with David Plouffe. David Plouffe was the former campaign manager for President Barack Obama, and David Plouffe wrote a book specifically outlining what would need to take place in order to overturn President Trump in the 2020 presidential election. He has consulted with Mark Zuckerberg, and his outline is essentially the blueprint for the CTCL grants. We're seeing these various entities that appear to be separate, but if you look at the patterns and you look at the money flow, there's a definitive trend of how these partnerships are taking place. Whether it's the groups themselves or particular individuals within that group, that is something to be brought into question, but as a whole, we're seeing a trend that's very concerning. In sum, the public-private partnership pattern has become really dangerous. It is allowing private individuals to determine the way that elections should be run. It's allowing these individuals into the counting room while specific poll workers and poll watchers are being kicked out, and the electoral process is being changed before our eyes because of private partnerships that are coming in and influencing how these elections are to be conducted. But again, this is also happening with voter roll access. And so these private-public partnerships need to be looked into in order to see if they are legitimate or if they are a reason for higher concern when it comes to the 2020 presidential election. We at Got Freedom are asking that the election not be certified until these public-private partnerships are looked into with further investigation. Stand with us to protect our electoral system.